Good morning. Hopefully everybody had a good evening last night. I'm glad to see that most of you are here. Got some emails from students saying, "Yeah, I've had some untoward things happen to me, and sure I cannot show up today." Well, you can imagine my answer. So we'll figure out something. But anyways, I think today we have a extremely successful speaker and alum of Notre Dame, and that's Mr. Paul Reilly, who's the chairman and chief executive officer of Raymond James Financial. He became the CEO in May of 2010 after joining the firm's management team as president and CEO designate in May of 2009. He has served on the firm's board of directors since 2006. From July of 2007 to April of 2009, he was the executive chairman of Korn Ferry International, a global provider of talent management solutions with more than 90 offices in 39 countries throughout North America, Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. He began his tenure with that company as chairman and CEO in 2001. Prior to Korn Ferry, he was the CEO at Kpmg International, a firm of course, more than 100,000 employees with annual revenues of $12 billion. He was based in Amsterdam, where he was responsible for the overall strategy and implementation of the firm's products, services, and infrastructure on a global basis. Before being named CEO at Kpmg, he ran the firm's financial services business and earlier had held senior management positions in its real estate consulting group. Mr. Reilly holds his Bachelor of Science degree and MBA from the University of Notre Dame and remains active with the school, serving on the Mendoza Graduate Alumni Board and the Business Advisory Council. He was recognized as the recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award in 2004-2005. He is a certified public accountant as well as a financial services industry leader, and he serves on the board of the Financial Services Roundtable and as an executive member of SIFMA, which is the voice of the nation's securities industry. He is also active in charitable causes, including involvement with the National Leadership Roundtable on Church Management, Our Lady of Divine Providence House of Prayer in Clearwater, Florida, the Suncoast United Way, and the American Heart Association's Tampa Bay Heart Walk. Please extend a warm welcome to Mr. Paul Reilly.
Well, thanks, Dale. I guess it's good morning still. It's hard for me to imagine when I went here at Notre Dame, back then the MBA class was in the Hayes-Healy building. And now I'm the old guy coming to speak to all the students. I used to always think about the person that came and spoke to us. So it's a big change for me, but it's a great opportunity to see all of you. So how many people know who Raymond James is? We have a few people that are stretching or looked it up on the internet last night, right? So just to let you know about the firm, it's kind of a unique firm. It's based in the financial capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. It was founded 45 years ago by a home builder named Tom James, who moved from Ohio to Florida to build homes for retirees. And when he was talking to them, he asked them, well, how are you going to retire? What's your financial plan? They didn't have any. So he started a financial planning firm back in St. Pete 45 years ago and ran the firm for about 12 years, got it up to $1 million, and his son took it over, Tom James. His MBA is not quite as good as mine. He's a Harvard MBA. And he took it over the next 30 years from 1 million to a little over 3 billion. Today, Raymond James is in the Fortune 500 and the S&P 500. And interesting enough, here this small firm in St. Petersburg was just upgraded by S&P to BBB+, which is the same credit rating as Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs. So how did a little startup in St. Pete get to be where it is today? And I'm not going to take credit for it. It was really through a long-term cultural buildup that started 45 years ago, which had one focus. If the client does well, the firm does well. And client first is on the center of everything we do. It also has the cultural values that you have to take care of clients, take care of your advisors who take care of clients, and your associates. So that culture has really been the growth story for Raymond James. Today, we have the highest retention in the industry. Our regretted attrition of advisors is less than 0.5% versus an industry that's 2 or 3%. We are the largest net recruiters in the industry for 5 years in a row. So why are advisors joining us and leaving big firms? Simple, it's the culture. The firm is based on that we're here to help advisors help their clients. My number one message, no different than Tom and Bob's, is I'm overhead. I don't do anything but add up numbers and make sure that the firm is helping clients, helping advisors help their clients. That relationship is unique, certainly amongst the big firms. If you read last week, Morgan Stanley announced they were going to leave the protocol. What's the protocol means? It means that if you as an advisor want to go from any of the protocol firms, Morgan Stanley to Raymond James, Merrill Lynch, you're allowed to take your client data, tell your clients you're moving, and your clients can choose to join you or not. They're leaving that where the firm will now sue if they try to move their clients. To show the opposite part of Raymond James, for our advisors, we put in the contract when they join us, you own your clients. They're yours. And if you move, we will help you move them to a competitor. So if I leave firms, the firm, clients would get a message, Paul Reilly is leaving to join Merrill Lynch. Here's how you contact them. So why is our turnover so much smaller than everybody? Because it changes the dynamics. We're now partners, not with employees. It's not a subservient relationship. We're partners. They're here because they want to be here. It forces us at Raymond James to be better. It forces us to make sure we're serving so people want to stay because they don't have to stay. Another unique part of our culture is no one has contracts. Advisors can leave. I don't have a management contract. Tom James, our chairman emeritus, doesn't. There's nobody in the firm that has a contract. We're all free agents. That means people are staying because they want to. And yet the average tenure on their executive committee is like 24 years. So again, why do we do that? It's how we operate the business. So we're one of the largest firms anywhere that has no planes, no cars, no boats. And I like planes and cars and boats. They'd be a lot of fun, right? But most of our firms, much smaller, have planes. We fly coach. We do not have executive dining rooms. If I go to Raymond James to the cafeteria and there's 30 people in line in front of me, I'm the 31st person in line. We don't cut. We get no benefits that every other employee doesn't get. Now, I get paid a lot more, let's be fair. So I should be able to afford it. But in most companies, not only do you get paid a lot more, you get life insurance, you get parking, you get we get no benefit that every other associate doesn't get. And it's to reinforce the message, we're one of the team. Now, I think that showed up probably most prominent during the last hurricanes. So during Hurricane Irma, it's interesting how people responded. I was actually up here for the Georgia game, really for the council meeting and the game, but I didn't get to go to the game because I had to worry about the hurricane. We sent out messages to our associates that said, look, storm's coming. We're going to be open, but you take care of your families first. And if you have to evacuate or you can't come to work because you're worried about your house or getting out, we will pay you anyway, even if you're hourly. We kept the offices open until about Wednesday. About 80% of the people showed up. We shut them Thursday and Friday. And we went into our disaster recovery plan, which was we have 3 operating centers. So we had a chartered plane that took 175 associates, their spouses, their children, their dogs and cats, one bird, to Memphis, which is our secondary center. So why did we do that? First, how many people would leave their families if they thought a hurricane was going to hit? So they were helping us by relocating, so we helped them to make sure they were comfortable. We put them up. We paid for all the expenses. We tried as best as we could in Memphis to entertain them over 4 days. When we brought them back, we opened up our home office as a hurricane shelter. Now, we're not built for that, but we put free food into the cafeteria. We made sure that people were comfortable so they didn't have their power. We gave every associate $300 after tax, whether they needed it or not, that was in any disaster recovery area to help them with a hotel, with food. And a lot of firms, and we communicated at least twice a day to associates to tell them nationwide what was going on with home office and what they could expect. Many firms did. Why do we do that? Because if we take care of associates, the $3 million extra we spent is nothing compared to what they do for us. And frankly, we'll get it back in retention. Our focus has been to grow. We've grown since I've been there from 8,000 to 12,000 people. We're in the S&P 500. And people ask, can we still keep that culture as we get bigger? So even events like that is, you don't want a hurricane to prove it, but you need to take every opportunity to show people that you're going to help them and be with them. Our goal is to be the premier alternative to Wall Street. It's not to slam Wall Street, but we're in a unique position. We're number 7 in terms of size, about $800 billion in assets. And we want to be big enough to be able to compete with the Wall Street firms, yet still feel like a small regional firm. You can walk into Raymond James, anyone can walk into my office, the doors are open, there's no guard, there's nobody to clear in a desk. Our culture is very interactive, very open, to keep that personal feel, and we believe it's the only difference. Imagine if we looked just like the 6 firms above us, who are much bigger, and we were just identical. How do you compete? I remind people every day that our only difference is our culture and how we treat people, and the fact that people don't leave. I actually believe we're more profitable than our competitors because we don't have turnover. It's very expensive to have people leave and then to recruit and pay to replace them. Our results, we just gave earnings. We had record earnings. Our top line up about 18%. Our bottom line adjusted for hurricane and acquisition expenses, about 35%. We have 23% Tier 1 capital. Our industry, 10% is well capitalized. We're double most of our competitors, and we had a 14.5% ROE. Banks run around 8.5. We're conservative in long term. How did we do that? We've had 119 consecutive quarters of profitability. Through every quarter of 2009, we made money. We had an 8% return on equity in 2009. And yet the firm has continued to outperform with that capital. That's not because of me. That's because of the foundation, the long-term conservative nature of the firm. So we had a record quarter last quarter, so what? That was great. It's a lot more fun to get on an analyst call with a record quarter than is a bad quarter. But I don't care when we make decisions. All of our decisions are, is the firm going to be better 5 years from now? So that's kind of the story of Raymond James, how we compete from little St. Petersburg, Florida, and we keep the values of some of my favorite firms. Paul Purcell's a close friend, runs our business council here, Notre Dame alum. There are a lot of firms that are culturally like us, but I believe one of our differences, besides keeping that culture, is we have the size and scale to compete. So for example, all of our advisors can do everything on their iPads and iPhones they can do on their desktop in the office, 100% mobile. We're rolling that app now out to our clients. But most firms would roll it to their clients first because they want to try to control them. We try to always make sure our advisors are in the best position to serve their clients. We don't roll anything out to the clients until the advisors have the information. So that's a little commercial about Raymond James. Usually I don't even talk about Raymond James at Notre Dame because that's not why we're here. But I believe that you sitting in this room have such a unique opportunity. The world is going through so much change. I see it. And what you go through in your careers is going to be exciting. For someone of my age, 63, 5 different career changes is a lot. For many of you, it won't be. Or certainly if you stay in your businesses, what you do will change dramatically. You're going to have to move fast. And I'll tell you the biggest challenges of firms today, of companies that move fast, they forget about the people part. They forget about the value part. And what Notre Dame is going to give you great training is to always remind you that it's not just about what you do, it's how you do it and the people around you. And I'm going to spend a little time on that a little later. I have a lot of connections to Notre Dame. My 2 older brothers went to Notre Dame. We all played tennis here. My oldest daughter is a double domer. My son-in-law is a double domer. My next daughter is a domer. Next one went to Miami of Florida, but we'll let her go on that one. So I've been always involved in the council here. And I believe so much in the university. And a lot of the experiences you're getting today, you won't even realize the benefit until later. So I'm going to tell you a little story about me and how someone who is I have a pre-med degree, got to be running a financial services Fortune 500 company. So it's not an intuitive career path, as you'll see, but it's one that you're going to go through because your careers won't be linear. Read a study yesterday, 27% of the people working today are working in the field of their degrees. So that means most people are working outside of where they were educated. So your careers also are going to have that kind of connection. When I grew up, I'm a family, I'm one of 8, an Irish Catholic family. My dad said, I don't care what you do, just be good, and if you want to go to college, I'll help you, but it has to be a Catholic school. So that kind of limited the field a little bit. All 8 of us went through different Catholic schools, but I remember my best friend, my dad was a pathologist, his dad was his partner, and since kindergarten, when I went to kindergarten with him, he said he wanted to be a pathologist. Find a 7-year-old or 6-year-old that wants to be a pathologist. Today, Kern's a pathologist. My oldest brother is a doctor, my sister is a doctor, and I figured out what the heck, I'll go into pre-med. I took the MCATs, I went all the way through pre-med, but just wasn't excited about it. So I went and then got my MBA here right at Notre Dame because it was a career change. If for anybody who's going to graduate pre-med and not go to medical school, there aren't a lot of pre-doctor jobs, no matter how hard you look. So I knew I had to do something different. I wasn't the best undergrad because I was lost my first few years. I had so-so grades because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And once I recognized I wanted to get into business school, I actually did better in things like biochemistry than I did in organic chemistry, or physics too, better than I did in physics, because I wanted to get into MBA school and get the grades. So I got very, very focused. And I was a good MBA student. And as I graduated through MBA school, I did what most of you did. I interviewed a lot of companies. Back then, I interviewed Goldman Sachs, Ford Motor Company, back when auto companies were kind of cool. Not anymore, maybe. Anderson Consulting, Accenture, which is now Accenture, Price Waterhouse Consulting, on, all these big companies, and was back for second interviews. And they were neat, but they were all such structured jobs. And I got an offer. My brother-in-law from Florida says, why don't you come down and interview with our little firm? We have 3 people. I said, there's no way I'm going to St. Petersburg, Florida, and starting with a small startup firm. And a professor here named Lee Tavis was my finance professor. And I don't know how many people had ever experienced Lee, but he's kind of a different guy. His first day of class, he spent the whole time this chart that was as long as this, and he goes, none of you are going to understand this today, but by the end of the semester, you'll understand it. He was partly right. And it was a macro finance chart of global finance on some paper he was writing. But he went and I said, Lee, I've got this firm. I would love to go back to St. Pete, but I always assume I had to work in New York and Chicago. And there isn't going to be an opportunity. And he went through this long story of saying, look, it's a startup. You're going to learn so much. You're going to be excited. And he goes, and if it goes bankrupt, it's even going to be better. It's going to be a great career experience. You're going to learn how to fail, and you're going to start all over again. So I don't know how much of the story I believe, but I really wanted to go down there. So I interviewed, and I started at a firm. And I'll put it in perspective, because I graduated in '78. That was a few years ago. The average MBA salary from Notre Dame was about $26,000. I think it was 32 or 34. I did pretty well in the MBA program. I took a job in St. Petersburg, Florida for $12,000. So I think I took the lowest job offer of my class. And probably was a market for me at the time, but I thought I could do better. And I did it because I could learn. I didn't do it for the salary. I did it because I thought I could grow. And Lee's advice was what set my career in many, many ways. I was in a job that I was always over my head. I always had to figure out to get resources to help, and every assignment was different. So I was learning every minute of my life in that job, and today, it's one of the traits I have. I'm learning every day. And that job really started it off, and I didn't really start for money. There is one thing as I take you through my career that I just read an article on CEOs. They interviewed 500 CEOs, and they said there's 3 things that drive, if you look at the careers of CEOs. One is trust. It's that people have to trust you, and that's anywhere in business, no matter if you're a CEO or not. Secondly, they say, CEOs, and this was my case, I never took a job to be a CEO. I never thought I would be CEO. Most people do a good job of what they're doing that moment. They focus on doing really good at what they did, which is another theme in my career. And third, it says, which is interesting, especially for you that join bigger firms, is play in traffic. What's that mean? Don't just stick to your job. Anytime there's an opportunity to do a project that's firm-wide, that gets you exposure, that allows you to learn, you really have a chance for others to see you and learn about jobs you may never even known about. The fourth, and they didn't say this, but I'm going to add this because it's key, is people think people are your competitors. They're absolutely not. And as I go through my job history, I'll tell you, people are your allies or your friends, and they're the only thing that allows you to get things done, even if you're the CEO. They're not your competitors going up through your career, even though it may feel like it at the time. And the last I'm going to talk about too is don't fear change. Change is an opportunity to learn every time. I don't know how many people run from change. A firm merges, they all quit, they're afraid they're going to lose their job. Who gets the top jobs? The people that just happen to hang around. Don't fear change, embrace change, make the best of it, be part of the solution. So here I started in this small firm in St. Petersburg, Florida, and ended up becoming the president. We grew from about 4 to about 20 in a few years doing consulting. And I got very concerned. Our founder, very brilliant, but very financially leveraged, took a lot of chances, started a bank. The bank made a lot of risky loans. He bought a big house, airplanes, horses. And I was afraid because of the reputation of working there. So one day I walked into his office and quit. I had no job, and I had a pregnant wife. Because I felt the value of my reputation had to be in line with the value of the firm. Now, he ended up going broke 4 years later, and he wasn't a bad guy. But you have to learn you got to take a conservative, long-term group in business. So I went out and opened my own office, and a friend of mine says, here, I'll give you a free office. I'll never forget this. I set it up, I put the telephone down, I had it all clear, and then I sat there. Nothing happened. I was used to the firm. The phone was ringing. Everybody was calling me. And I realized that no one was going to call me unless I called them. It's the first time I really had to be an entrepreneur where things weren't done for me. So I had to go out and call clients, tell them I was in business, meet with them, tell them what I could do for them. And when they asked me what I did, I told them I was self-unemployed because it was just me. And from there, the person that rented the office with me said, why don't you join me? He was a real estate developer. You're financially astute. You've done a lot of real estate loan analysis for banks and helped me set up the financing. So I did. And you know, he was a great guy, great experience. So we got our first project. We got a historic rehab in the city. We had to get a historic designation. We got industrial revenue bond financing, which was a low-rate financing back then. Rates were 12%, which are almost unbuildable. We got it for 6% through getting this. Started demolition of the building, and one day a friend of mine calls and says, Paul, is that your building on 1st and 2nd? And I go, yeah. He goes, no, on the northwest corner. I go, yeah. He goes, it's on fire. Every penny I had was in that building, in the project. So it would have been my first and last real estate project. We go down there, there's the flames, the fire department's putting it out, and they're ready to pull down the walls. And under historic preservation, if you keep 75% of the walls, you keep the credits and the bonds. If they pulled it down, you had none of that. So we convinced them to go in. We never even looked at the insurance policy. So we went in the office that night and read what the insurance policy said. And this guy's an entrepreneur. He goes, Paul, we're going to make this better than it was before. And it's the power of optimism. another curveball. The next morning, we have this TV reporter comes in. It's a young woman. I have to admit, I was a young guy at the time and single. She was kind of cute. And she goes, I know this is a hard time for you, but we just like to do an interview. It's a human interest story on this historic building. I go, I'll relate to business. I promise it won't be bad. So I talk to Ian. We bring her in. She gets across. She goes, just take a second. Camera rolls. What's it like being the leading arson suspect in the suspicious fire last night? So if you want media training, right, and to prepare for anything, and then the paper that day, owners suspected in suspicious fire. The next day, we had a retraction, and the insurance company actually wrote us a check that next day, because there was no reason. But you see, every time you do something, you're going to get impediments that you think are going to set you back. Because of Ian, really, we fought through it. It became a very productive. We made a lot of money on that building because we were able to restore it, lease it up. It had a lot of interest, and it still stands today. Ian and I broke up for one reason. As partners, 1987 came, which is a real estate recession. We did very well together. Ian thought we could beat the market. I'm not a person that beats the market. I'm very conservative. I remember doing my balance sheet, and I said my goal was never to be rich. Look at all these loans I'm on. I said, we need to stop. He didn't want to. So I had a consulting advisory business I'd built with him and decided we'd split the firm, and I sold my business to Kpmg. Now, this was a merger of equals. My 20 people and their 40,000 in the US came together, right? So we were just a little gnat. I was their first direct entry partner in over 5 years, the first acquisition in over a decade. And so I was a little piece of a big firm. And it was the only job I ever thought I would, every job I've taken, I thought I would retire there. It's the only job I took where I said, I'll honor my 2-year contract, and I'm not going to work for a big accounting firm. Well, through a series of accidents, I was CEO, the first global CEO 12 years later. And you think it's a series of accidents. Let me tell you the accidents. I was running the Tampa Bay consulting practice. They decided, because of my real estate background, they wanted someone to run the Southeast real estate consulting practice. The guy shows up at the partners meeting with 2 slides, one with my name on it, one with a guy from Miami's name on it. Good guy, Frank Nardoza. He didn't even know until he walked up stage who was going to be running it. So it was really 50-50. I ended up getting the job. The next job was a national real estate consulting practice. We had a new leader, and he asked a guy in LA who he worked with to be the next head. And he goes, you know what? Paul Reilly would really do a better job at that than me. You should give it to him. He got offered the job and basically gave it to me. So I was on the other side of a 50-50. Right? So my next exposure, this was great. The firm came out with an expense policy, which was really stupid for consultants traveling. So my boss asked me to write a memo on the expense policy, which is pretty sarcastic because you could go to the bar and get a drink, but you couldn't get a bottle of water out of your refrigerator, right? You could go out and spend $100 on a dinner, but they wouldn't pay for the gym. So I wrote pretty funny, sarcastic. I thought it was going to my boss. He sent it to his boss on the management committee, who sent it to all the management committee and board members. So I went from a nobody in the firm to pretty famous overnight. And because of that, they asked me to join a future directions committee on setting a new direction of the firm. So I talk about playing in traffic. Maybe that's not the way you should. But that exposure actually lifted me to the executive ranks of the firm. So the next job was my boss, who headed consulting, was stepping down, financial services consulting, and they asked me to take the job because I had a little banking background. I was shocked. I turned it down because honestly, it was a team that you would say together was a very miserable group of people. I liked my job. I didn't want to do it. And they said, well, how would you do it? I said, well, have them vote to see who wants to take it. And I got a unanimous vote, except me. I voted for someone else, and I took over the group. And the first meeting we had was a strategy meeting. And the partners all came together. It wasn't a big group. And they started talking about, two guys especially, oh, we're in a doom loop. We're in a death spiral. We can't get out of this. I said, stop. We're talking about how we grow it. They wouldn't stop. So if you guys don't stop, I'm leaving. It was a 2-day meeting. I left at lunch. They actually thought I went to lunch and was coming back. I got on a plane and flew out and left the partners there alone. Reconvened the meeting the next month with the senior managers, the next step, who had a stake in the future, right? They wanted to grow their careers. And we had, I called it Moonshot 2000, I remember this. The practice was doing a little over $10, $12 million and losing money. And the goal was, how are we gonna hit $100 million in 3 years? You know, and after all the laughing and stuff, we went through a game plan. We didn't hit 100,000 in 3 years, we hit 120. And it was, the message there is, how do you get people around a vision, even when things are bad, that they can lift themselves out and look at the opportunity? We're in financial services where the technology revolution was just beginning. So how do we bring technology and the industry experience together and grow? And it actually ended up being a great career. And then I was asked, I was being considered to take my boss's job to run financial services, audit, tax, and consulting. Irony of life, I'm a CPA. I don't have an accounting degree. You can't do that anymore. What happened when I went to the consulting firm, it was an accounting firm that only did consulting, my first job. I took the CPA test for fun. It tells you I must not be very fun. I happened to pass it. 3 75s and a 76. You need a 75 minimum to pass. I overstudied. I couldn't have had that job if I wasn't a CPA. I took it for the heck of it. So you never know in expanding your careers what that's going to lead to. So it's between me and somebody else. I never thought I would get that job. We had the biggest audit practice in the world in financial services. The other guy was an audit guy. I was a consulting guy. And they ended up giving me that job. Now, I was surprised, he was surprised, and actually despondent. So what did I do? And this is where people aren't your enemies. I made him my COO. Every speech we gave, he was next to me. I treated him as a partner. Why? I needed him to run the practice, and he was valuable. So I set my own ego aside and just cared about being successful. And Bill and I did a great job. I mean, we took a practice that was shrinking. Kpmg had the largest audit share, and when banks were merging. You know what happens in audits when you merge? 1 + 1 = 1 when you're the accountants. So your 2 audit fees become 1. And so as the market was consolidating, because we had the largest market share, our revenues were going down. So once again, we rolled out a strategy to focus on the winners. Who were going to be the winners in financial services? We had to bet on the banks that were going to be successful. So we refocused all of our efforts on firms that we thought would be the winners in the battle for financial services. And I'll never forget, I was at the management committee, and we all had coaches that year. It was Vogue. And they assigned a coach to me. And I took the plan the first year where we shrank 5%, and we grew 2%. And I remember presenting at the board, and it had been shrinking for 5 years, and I was really proud of what I was doing. And everyone left the room. My coach came up to me, and he goes, "Do you think you did a good job?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you think those are good accomplishments?" I said, "Yeah, you know, we passed our goals." He said, "You know, Paul, most people as managers are stewards of the inevitable. Markets go up, they do better. Markets go down, they do worse. Do you really think you made a difference?" And to this day, I hate that guy because it haunts me in everything I do. And it was absolutely right. You get in these positions and the market's up. Hey, if you're in my industry in the last year and you didn't do better, there's something seriously wrong when the markets go up 25%. So is it different because I'm in my role, or could they put anybody in that role? And again, you have to look, you know, when people get these CEO positions, a lot of times they think they got anointed by God, right? They're CEOs. These are trusteeships. These are responsibilities. How do you take a firm or your organization or your division and make it better? That's your job. Better for the people, better for the firm. And you shouldn't be in there unless you have that kind of passion. So from there, I ran. Our chairman stepped down, 4 years, surprise. And Kpmg had an interesting process. People would nominate and run for chairman. Every year in the history of the last 20 years, everyone that ran for chairman and lost was gone. I was 40-some years old. I wasn't really ready, but I figured, oh, what the heck, because a lot of people pushed me and I ran for chairman. And I finished third. And third's kind of great if you're in the Olympics, at least you get a medal. You know, when you're running for chairman, third doesn't mean anything, except that maybe people are worried that you're, going to compete against them. So I'll never forget the chairman that won, the US, came to me. I mean, we were having a meeting, and I could tell he was just uneasy with me since the election. And I just turned to him, I go, Steve, we both ran for chairman. You won, I lost. I wanted to stay. Am I missing something? And he goes, you didn't have to say that. And I go, yeah, I did. And ever since then, that guy was really an advocate for me because he understood that I was there to do my job and make the firm better. Maybe, because here's the next step. Right after I lost, Ernst & Young tried to recruit me to head their financial services division. And I talked, and I liked the job opportunity. I felt like I was on the outs at Kpmg, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't go to a competitor and compete against my friends. So I actually went to our chairman and said, look, this would be great if we merged. Our strengths and their strengths are different. And they actually started talking and merged. They made a merger talk and agreed to a merger. And our chairman, Steve, said each person got to pick 6 people for the executive committee. So there would be kind of a tie. There'd be the chairman of each firm, 6 on the executive committee, and whoever voted would be what the joint firm would do. And so Steve calls me into his office and he goes, Paul, you're my last meeting because it's my hardest meeting. That's never a good sign. He goes, I didn't pick you to be on the executive committee. And the reason is I need to know I have 6 votes. I know you'll vote in the best interest of the merged firm and not for me every time. And he was right. And I admired him because he was totally honest. If I was in that role, I would have voted for whatever I thought was best for the firm, not for one side or the other. So I said, look, Steve, that's okay, I'll leave after this. I can give you any other job but heading financial services. I said, no. But I won't tell anybody I'll leave. I'll get through the merger, and then I'll go find something else. That merger fell apart because the 2 chairmen decided they didn't trust each other. And there was an executive meeting in London. And I'll never forget this. Of all places, I had a global financial services consulting meeting in Prague. And it was evening, so we were at the oldest beer hall in Prague, right? And so I see someone going through the basement going, Paul Reilly, Paul Reilly. I thought, oh no, something's wrong with the family or something. And I get on the phone and it's Steve. He goes, Steve? He goes, Paul, I'm at the board meeting in London. We need to pick the first global CEO. I nominated you. Come tomorrow and interview. And, oh, by the way, I won't use his language. Don't mess it up. And he hung up. So here I was from leaving the firm to doing an interview in London. A week later, I was announced as the first global CEO of Kpmg. Now, this is what I'm using about people. If you trust people, you're honest with them, you treat them well, even people you don't think are on your side become great advocates. So I became the CEO of Kpmg. It was a great global career. I learned all about global traveling and countries and made a lot of friends around the world. But honestly, I got tired of it. And firms that big, you don't feel like you have a lot of control. But again, every job has its crisis and turning point. Mine is after I was named. We were trying to globalize the firm. When we announced we were going to global in 3 regions. We were going to merge Asia, North America, and Europe. The guy running Canada, Spencer Lothier, a great guy, said, I don't want to be overshadowed by the US. If we don't join the 7 firms, I'm leaving. And he announced he was leaving and joining Arthur Andersen. So here I am, the new CEO, right? And I'm going to lose one of the top firms. So what did? We did a hostile takeover. I got the firm to put up money. We went to Canada. We recruited enough partners to stay that Andersen pulled out, and they reorganized. After that, a lot of countries feared me, and I'm pretty straightforward. I had nothing to do with the process. And Spencer once said, I only have one question. We had drinks after. He was stepping down, obviously. He said, would you have done this if it was the US? I said, absolutely, that's my job. So again, focusing on doing your job and getting the trust of people. We're friends today, even though, you know, he kind of lost his position through running that. So anyway, I left Kpmg later because I just got tired of travel. I was based in Amsterdam, London, traveling all the time. And I thought I'd like to run a smaller firm that was entrepreneurial. So I got recruited by a firm called Korn Ferry. And it was the largest recruiting firm at the time. And when I joined it, I knew it was having trouble. They said they were having trouble. They brought a CEO in that wasn't affected. They'd gone public and lost money since raising $300 million. So I learned a lot at Kpmg. I didn't learn due diligence skills really well. I accepted it. I went to my first day. By my second day, I knew the firm was on the edge of going broke. So another awakening, right? So I get in, I see what we have to do, you know, go through a plan with the board of raising private equity. They were shocked, but we were losing money. 45% of our business was internet consulting in 2001 when I joined. So you know where that business went. In 2001, no one was recruiting anyone in tech. I was going through the restructuring. I announced this plan and vision, and people were leaving, and I was fearful of being able to be successful. So I called the founder, Richard Ferry. I was chairman, CEO, and I go, Richard, I don't want to ruin your company. People are leaving. You know, we don't have much resources, and I just don't think I'm the right person to do this. And there's this long pause, and he says, listen, son, I built this firm over 40 years since starting in a restaurant. A lot of the people on your executive committee have been with me 25 plus years. It's a great brand. People trust me. They deserve a leader. And if you're not the leader, get the hell out of the way and let someone lead. So you sleep on it tonight and decide. Another long pause. And oh, by the way, I think you're the right person. Another pause. Anything else I can help you with tonight? Okay, I'll talk to you in the morning. Click. Well, I had a great night's sleep. But I woke up and realized he was absolutely right. We had a great brand, a great people. What we need to do is get them together. So I called a global partners conference. I put in a strategy. They saw my passion and commitment to be the best firm again. We'd gone from 1 to 3 because we had to cut a third of the people. We had no money. We were losing money. And 5 years later, we paid off our $90 million of debt in default. We bought out our $100 million private equity. We had $300 million in the bank, and we went from number 3 to number 1 in 5 years. By far the largest firm. Today, the market cap of our closest competitors, Korn Ferry's, is $2 billion. Heidrick & Struggles is $260 million. They were twice as big as us when we started. And it wasn't the people, it wasn't the business, it was the commitment of the leader. So I learned another, you have to be 100% committed. You can't be in any job. If you're not committed, leave the job. If you're going to be in the job, be 100% committed and get it all. Today, Korn Ferry, $2 billion market cap, it's very diversified and doing very, very well. And had I not had that conversation with Richard, I probably would have left. The company would have probably gone under, and I would have said it's not my fault. They didn't tell me when they recruited me. Instead, it got to be the best experience of my business life, being able to turn the firm around in some of my closest relationships. I left Korn Ferry for a reason. I was tired. 12 years of global travel. Korn Ferry was only in 40 countries. Kpmg was in 160. I thought a smaller firm might travel less. It's the opposite. Smaller firm, you're traveling. So I had to spend my time to make sure in Japan and China and Europe that they all knew that we were committed to a global firm and changed that firm. And one day I just walked into a board at a board meeting and said, I'm too tired. I really like to start succession. Big mistake. The board supported me on everything. The day I said that, they thought I was leaving tomorrow. I told them I wasn't. And I caused a lot of pandemonium and convinced them, though. I said I would stay on 2 years if they made the COO the CEO. They didn't want to do it. They wanted to go outside. I said, if you go outside, I'll stay through the process, but I'll leave the next day. If you make Gary the CEO, I will stay 2 years, and the day you don't need me, I'll step off. He's doing a good job. If he's not doing a good job, I promise I'll come back in full time and run the company. Company's done great. It's doubled the market cap since I left. They asked me what I was going to do, and I said, I never want to run a publicly traded company again. And it's too much regulation. So here I am at a public company, and arguably one of the most over-regulated industries in the world. We have 6 regulators, even in a company our size, not counting the states. And they must think I'm the biggest liar in the world, because they asked me about, I said, the only company I'd look at is Raymond James. I was on the board, but there's no way they would ask me to be the CEO. And I meant it. And I was shocked, actually, in November, the year before the contract was up to Tom. James asked me to succeed him. And you know why I did it? First, I transitioned from a founder to another person before. Tom was a great leader. He took the company from $1 million to $3 billion as an entrepreneur. But he was the CFO. He was the head of HR. All decisions came to Tom. And the company was getting too big. And he was getting, his late 60s and didn't have the same energy that is the 40s. And I love the firm. I love the values of what it stands for. It's one of the biggest employers in our area, community, where I have 7 siblings and my grandchildren. I love the cultural values. I knew a lot of the people. So I stepped up to be the CEO there. And it's been a great experience. Now, another accident, way back in my real estate development days, I got my Series 7 and 24 because we were raising capital for our real estate partnerships. And I thought I would never use those again. Of course, those are the licenses you need in the financial services industry. So you can go through all of this and can see that most careers, I call them a series of accidents. Now, unlike my friend Kern that knew he wanted to be a pathologist at 6 years old, and is a pathologist today with his sister who's a pathologist, more people have my kind of career paths. And in your generation, your career paths will most likely look a lot more like mine. There's going to be rapid change, rapid changes in life. Companies are going to come in and out and get created. Big companies, small companies will come in and out of existence. And that gives you the opportunity to do everything that you want to do. And I'd like to leave you just with a few thoughts. First, whatever you do, build trust. People aren't your competitors. They're your allies or the people that help you get things done. Always be honest. That's what we treat at Notre Dame. The fact Steve asked me to become his boss was because he trusted me, because he saw in the very hardest parts at Kpmg, I was honest with him. Trust brings you a long, long way. You have to be confident in what you do. In a CEO role, I say I'm never confident, I'm never certain, never in doubt, right? People don't want to hear that I'm second guessing. In back meetings, sure, I'm always open, you want to learn things, but people want leadership, they want a direction. And when I make mistakes, I tell people I make mistakes. And first and third, be committed to whatever you do. Do the best job in whatever job you're in at the time. If you don't like it, go on and look for another job. But while you're in that job, do the best you can do. You'll learn, you'll be more productive, and you'll get more opportunities. Business is a marathon, not a sprint. I think the worst books are written are the first 90 and 120 days. You got to have your 90-day plan, show results. If I made choices on people my first 90 days in every one of my jobs, half of them would have been wrong. What's the race? Just like next quarter, a year from now, no one's going to remember next quarter. They're going to remember how the firm's doing 2 and 3 and 4 years from now. Make sure that you're looking long term, that you're learning, and that you're continuing to work in a direction. Always make sure you're caring about people. I think that the most gratification I get even from old firms is people say, God, I remember Paul when he was at Kpmg, he mentored me and did this. I don't even remember the conversation. It was important to them. Just like I'm sure there were conversations people had with me, like Lee Tavis. He probably wouldn't have remembered a year ago he had that conversation, but it had a huge impact. So reach out to people, spend time with people. Work-life balance is important. I didn't do a great job at it, and I had to pay the price for that. And it is important for everybody. But I also see sometimes, as we hire millennials, that there isn't a work balance. So you have to work hard. I'll tell you, the people that get ahead often aren't any smarter. You guys are all smart. They outwork the person next to them. So spend time with your family, your community, keep it balanced, but you got to work hard. It isn't a 9-to-5 business, most industries. And you know, if that's your passion, that's great. I have a daughter that teaches. I have a daughter who's in charity work. I have 6 daughters, so you know, and that's great. But they'll comp, and their career in life is different, and that they're doing great things. But if you're in business, you have to work hard. But keep it in balance. I remember at my daughter's wedding, who's a double domer, her husband was, I talked about over the cathedral, over the door it says, God, country, Notre Dame. And I remember telling my dad that when I was at Notre Dame. He goes, that's not right, Paul. It's God, family, country, and Notre Dame. So make sure in your life with your family and friends you keep connected also. So that's a little bit of my journey. I love to answer questions. In fact, I'll tell you the kind of culture we come from at Raymond James. We just had a women's symposium, our 27th annual women's symposium, 450 financial advisors. And the first question was, Paul, you cut our pay. We cut the payouts to advisors for the first time in a decade. You cut our pay this year. What's your pay cut going to be? And my answer was, what I love about Raymond James, it's the only place you can ask that question and not worry about your job. And secondly, I think it's a fair question, so let me answer it. So any question's a fair question, both personal or business. I know people, especially on Fridays, would rather the class be shorter than longer, but I'm happy to answer anything you'd like to talk about. All right, a word for the first question, always the hardest one.
What's it like making the transition from CEO in like the financial service industry to what you did at Korn Ferry?
Okay. So my career has all been professional services. So if there's a bias to what I do on people, it's because it's the asset, right? Of all those businesses, 60% of the revenue was used to pay people versus manufacturing businesses. So the people part, very little. It's understanding the culture, motivating people getting in. The complexity of Raymond James is exponential. Korn Ferry had, the only places we were regulated were in Michigan and China. Everything else, there was no really regulation. We're regulated by every state we do business in. We're regulated by 6 federal regulators. So that gets really difficult. At Korn Ferry, I could open up in China and India and new cities, and my exposure was a lease and the hiring of people. If I do that at Raymond James, it's 10s and 20s and maybe $100 million of capital. So you're making a real bet that you're putting capital in somewhere and you can't get it out. So it's a much longer term, even though when we opened an offices in Korn Ferry, we never really closed any. They were still long term, but the cost of a mistake was a lot less. Also, the regulatory differences between the UK, Canada, and the US, just 3 of the many markets we're in, are really astounding. Even though the principles are the same, the approaches are very different. So it gets very, very complex. So the people part of the business was easy. So private client, our biggest part, our wealth business, 70%, were a lot like everybody else. Investment bankers were a lot like our consulting business. So the personalities weren't different, but the capital, the implications were very, very different. It's hard to communicate with big groups of professionals because they're so busy. The only way I said I can get their attention if I put change in comp on the subject line, they'll read it. Otherwise, you know, I'll be one of 100 other emails I got that hour that they have to choose to read. So it's really the complexity of the business, the changing of the regulatory environment, which until last year was astronomically difficult. I believe we're in an industry that needs to be regulated. The shift in the last 4 years of regulation has been astounding. I went from about 10% to 40% of my time just on regulatory matters. and a company that's pretty clean. So, you know, I should be spending time on clients and strategy, but that's how much the regulation came. Part of it is that we were the largest firm to speak out into Congress against the Department of Labor rules that came out. The big firms were afraid because of regulatory retribution. Our attitude is, if it's bad for clients, we have an obligation to speak out. So besides a few letters from Elizabeth Warren, I haven't been scathed by it. And in fact, that rule looks like it's going to be put on hold. So there is a shift. We haven't seen the undoing a lot of regulations, but we've seen the stop of new regulations and the talking about pulling back. So they shouldn't go away, but they're way over the top. And so that adds a lot of complexity, especially when they were changing rapidly. Up here?
Paul, if I could, oh, thank you. Thanks for being here. Could you talk to these kids? Is there something today that you look back on that you'd wished either studied, thought about, something back then that you know now that maybe would have, could have had a big impact on you as you got out of here and got going? Thanks.
I think one of the challenges in any degree is I've always wanted to take more than I could. So I was pretty adventuresome. So I took astronomy and space tech because they were easier courses back then. But I took a course called poetry writing, which was my real venture out. So I was with a bunch of English majors and we had to write poems. I am not artistic at all. And so I remember the one assignment that said we had to write 5 haiku on different subjects. So I spent weeks and studied hard, and the professor comes back and goes, I've been teaching this class for 20 years. These are the greatest poems I've ever read. He goes, let me read a few. What sound does happiness make? I remember the title of one he read, and he read through them. I was all excited. I get my paper, and across the top it said, you've got to be kidding. So I knew I wasn't going to be a poet, and that was my C course. But I took it, and I'm glad I did. So I would say if you're interested, now you guys are in finance, most of you. It's hard for me to imagine people that don't have an econ or finance course in any line of business. I think it's so critical to our world. A lot of people don't need budgeting. But outside that is follow your passions. Like I said, 27% of people, only 27% of people work in the field of their degrees. It's a lot higher for business majors. So you're going to learn a lot on your job. So take stuff you're interested in. Anything else you can learn on your job. So that's why we can take a lot of arts and letters majors and put them in the finance business, and they do well. So as long as you're learning and agile, I don't look back and say I missed a course or wish I'd done that. I wish I maybe had spent more time on organic chemistry when I was here. But maybe if my grades were better, I'd gone to med school, and I'm not sure I would have been happy there. So it's hard for me to look back. So, you had a question?
Thanks so much for the time. One of the things that you mentioned in the beginning was the fact that you're always continuously learning. Today, from your viewpoint, are there any technologies or new emerging markets that really have caught your eye, that really interest you?
There are things, so through intellectual curiosity, you look at a lot of things. So whether it's cryptocurrencies, blockchain, for example, are probably the 2 most popular. I'm not a fan of cryptocurrencies with Jamie Dimon. And the reason I've learned, and I'm not saying they're good or bad, I've learned in my career that if you can't take something and follow it back to its source, you never know what you have. And if you look at the meltdown of the financial services industry in 2009, it's people that were buying stuff that they didn't even know what's in there. So anytime, and I've spent a lot of time looking at it, I don't understand the valuation mechanism. Through blockchain, we spent a lot of money in cybersecurity and believe we're state of the art. We have a cybersecurity contest, 2 a year at Raymond James. People trying to call it capture the flag, but break into things. It's a fun event. But I look at that and say, I don't understand the security of it yet at the different places in the chain, and is there enough information to correct it if it happened? And if someone gets in it, what can they get out? But more importantly, even leaving the technology aside, I don't get the underlying valuation and what the fluctuations are and why much, I could say that about gold to some extent, except historical. Some people think the US dollar is, a security without anything behind it either. But so I stay away from it only because we ban it. Owning it at Raymond James it's just too speculative. And until we can figure out what that basis is behind it to make it work, and forget me, I'm not as smart, but take someone like Jamie Dimon who believes the same. Yeah, I'm suspicious. That's any asset class. It doesn't mean it's good or bad. And I tend to be an early adopter personally, and as a company, we adopt after things get a little more mature. But I think it's an interesting area as we look at blockchain, we look at all the other things. Cybersecurity is something that's just incredibly, advancing every day. So when I started 8 years ago, we had 5 people in cybersecurity monitoring the network and 3 pieces of software. Today we have 74 pieces of software fighting incursions. We turn them down, we block about 4 million emails a day. We get 30 to 50 cybersecurity attacks a day. We have 110 people whose only job is to monitor the attacks, see who gets in occasionally through the first line of defense, make sure they don't get through the second or third, and make sure they can't get any information out. That's the life today, and that's something that's growing and technologically a challenge for all of us. And whether it's the electrical grid, financial services. So all those technologies are really, really interesting. A lot of small tech services firms in our industry that are really, really doing well. And so I kind of look at the emerging techs more than I do like robo-advice, which I think is a fad for a piece. The technology isn't. Everyone is you guys are going to all want to self-initiate, be able to go in and direct, but I believe when you have money, you're going to want advice too. So the technology part is table stakes, but but I look at that, which we're rolling out also, as important, but I don't think it challenges the undermining of our industry. So I wandered there a little bit.
How has the shift from active investment management style to more of a passive investment management style affected the business model?
Yeah, a good question on the business model. So a lot of people don't understand that a lot of revenue we get at our firm is actually support from active managers. They actually pay to be on our platform. And those are hundreds of millions of dollars. So as we shift from active to passive, which pay us a lot less, or even from active high-cost funds to active lower-cost funds, it has a big impact for us. And the challenge is how do we, because it's not just profits, it's really supporting the platforms and the service that we have to build for clients. And other people have addressed this differently. Morgan Stanley decided to charge every client a platform fee of $100, and they would rebate any of the fees they get back from clients. So they charge clients directly. Some firms everybody has a different answer to this. So I don't have the answer, but it's affecting all of us. It's affecting us in equity capital markets where people are going to private equity. Underwritings are down. Private equity's up. Now our M&A business is way up because the private equity firms buy businesses and sell them, but our underwriting business is going. So you have to ask, what's going to happen to underwriting and active management? And it's more than just how it impacts our business. It's how does it impact the economy? Who allocates capital to industries today? It's the active managers. If everyone's passive, who's really generating where capital flows go? So it's a big topic. It's such a big topic that actually our executive committee and board offsite is fully devoted to the shift of active to passive across all of our businesses. So I'm not fearful of it. Part of it is good because it'll lower costs to clients. Part of it is going to force us to think differently and allocate differently. But no different than online trading or other things probably help us increase our technologies. But it is an impact, and we can see revenue going down. It's also, our model has always been that the advisor and the firm are on the same side with the client. Now all of a sudden advisors can give clients cheaper funds, which is good. They're not impacted, but we're impacted. So the money comes from our pocket to the client. So the question is, how do you charge fairly, all three? It has to be right for the client first, then the advisor and us, but we all have to make reasonable money, or we shouldn't be in the business. So it is a big shift, and I don't have the answers. I think the industry's struggling, but it's not overnight. About 20% of our funds are now in ETFs, and it's growing. I think it'll continue to grow. It won't go to 100, might go to 40 or 50, but it is changing the economics, but I don't think it's changing the fundamental way we're serving clients. So, but if you have an answer, please let me know before February when we're still doing the study today. The best study we did is 6 years ago. I did a budget, a 5-year plan for the board, and they all came and said, well, this budget looks good, but you're just drawing a straight line, which I took a little resentful for, because we had like a 1,000-page document. Some businesses up, some businesses down. They said, okay, look, you're right. We believe the budget, which we've been able to beat now in retrospect, but they go, is the business going to be better positioned for the next 20 years, 5 years from now? Which is a great question. So 6 years ago, we did a study called Client of the Future. We teamed with MIT Age Lab, McKinsey, other people, and said, what is our client going to look like in 20 years? And it was really fantastic because it's driving everything we're doing today. So today, all of our advisors, as I said, are mobile. Why are they mobile? Because 6 years ago, we decided everything was going to be mobile. The client-advisor relationship had to be mobile 24/7. So we changed the advisors' desktops. We changed to be mobile and interactive. We're putting out the client piece now. And I think the same type of thing is going to come from our roadmap of active to passive. What's our response? And the response isn't going to be overnight. It's going to be a 10-year response as this industry evolves. So some of it driven by regulation. The DOL increased that shift of the new legislation, but that legislation looks like it's going to be on hold for 18 months as the SEC restudies it. So.
Yeah, thanks for coming. My question was about the Department of Labor law changes that you mentioned. With Raymond James being an advocate for the client, it seemed like you were indicating that was not beneficial. I was wondering if you could extrapolate on that, why that's not beneficial, and if you guys were going to the 80-20 blend, 60-40 sort of thing that I've experienced with a different firm, and how you're addressing that and how you see it going forward.
Yeah, so the reason is almost anything that's rules-based versus principle-based has a lot of unintended consequence. So the rule by the group started off, and they basically said it. The first draft, which got leaked, said financial advisors are the termites eating the savings of the American public. So you start off, if advisors are dishonest and clients are stupid, everyone's taking advantage of clients, which is not the case. Now, there's certainly 1% of any population that'll do the wrong thing, even us. We weed people out because people make bad judgments or do the wrong thing. The rules set a lot of prescriptive things, which some, in theory, are absolutely right. So level fee. We want you to charge a level fee no matter what the asset is. So, for example, in a lot of our accounts today, we have accounts where we say if you have so much cash, you can't bill on the cash. So if you're putting clients in cash, you shouldn't bill them for it. Under the DOL rule, we have to bill them for it level with the other asset classes. If you own Apple stock, and you're just going to let it sit there, like my nephew, he's had it since he was 10, and now he's 25. It's done pretty well for him. He's in a commission-based account. He pays nothing. Under DOL, he has to be in a fee-based account, and we have to charge him every year for that account. Or we can enter into a written contract with him and have all this special compliance and all these costs and monitor his account specially, which costs us thousands of dollars to monitor an account that's going to do nothing. And frankly, he's better off just not being charged. And so what you were seeing is it was forcing clients into fee-based accounts that frankly would have been a lot better off not in fee-based accounts. And it was forcing us, to raise account minimums to pay for all this extra cost of the clients, and it was to protect the 1%. I'm a firm believer is what you do is you take that 1% are doing the wrong things and you kick them out of the industry. We kick people out of our firms as other firms do. They get written on their U4 and then they can go join another firm and do it again. You know, why aren't they, in professional services in general, you could say that about doctors, lawyers, they should be more aggressive. That's the way the industry used to work. So when you set a standard to protect from the 1%, the lowest common denominator to everybody, you get rules that just don't make sense. It takes away advisor choice. So, okay, you can't sell syndicate or products into an IRA account. So if we were doing Facebook's IPO and we weren't a major underwriter, we were a co-underwriter, and a client said, I want to buy Facebook in my IRA, we could say, can't. We're selling it. It's proprietary. So why can't you? Well, we're not allowed to. So you're actually limiting products based on rules, which in theory are good, right? You shouldn't sell your own products into an account or force people to use it, but we do that through other ways. We have no incentives at Raymond James to sell. We have our own funds. They get paid the same. There's no incentives for selling our funds, no trips, no awards. Branch managers don't have quotas. It's completely neutral. So you can have this rule to protect them, or you can have a philosophy that if people are doing something egregious, to go after them. And if you do something really bad in arbitration, you're going to get your money back. So it's a rule that's well intended. I actually believe it was well intended. The theory, client's interest first, sure. Who's going to argue with that? But fiduciary standard, which means, okay, you're under an SEC law that was written in 1934. I don't know what the securities industry looked like in 1934. It was very different. And then giving clients the right to class action suits. If someone sues us in a class action, we spend $3 to $4 million to defend it, even if it's frivolous. And we don't get the attorney's fees back. So any attorney would have the right under DOL to say, give me all 500,000 or $1 million of your accounts and show me how you charge these fees and stuff. The amount of work it takes us to produce that is staggering. And then generally what they want to do is settle because they know you don't want to spend a couple $1 million to defend it. And so why did we need class action? Arbitration's there. So, and there are people that debate that. But that's why we believed it was a bad rule. So we defended it because we thought it would cost the clients money. The early studies for the first half of the rule shows it does. And what the DOL said, the Department of Labor said, yes, it will cost clients money, but it protects them from advisors. And I just don't believe that's the way you do it, by limiting choice and charging fees to access. Any one of our clients can go to a robo. They can go to anybody else if they want to invest. They don't have to come to us. And we police it too, because we view clients' well-being as the center of our business. So I believe most firms do. But we're not perfect, right? Every advisor isn't perfect. So you understand what generates the legislation. It was over-legislation for what they were trying to do. Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone coming, and the most important thing is we beat Wake Forest this weekend. So I was here during 2 national championships between graduate and undergraduate. Had to wait for a few, but hey, we may have a shot again. So thank you for your time.